Have you ever been sitting in complete silence, maybe late at night when the world finally stops demanding your attention, and suddenly you hear it, that high-pitched ringing in your ears that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once? You look around thinking maybe it's the electronics, maybe it's the heating system, maybe it's something in the physical world that's causing this sound. But deep down, in that place where your soul whispers truths, your mind tries to rationalize away. You know it's something else entirely. You know because when it happens, something shifts inside you. There's a moment of disorientation, almost like you're being pulled between two realities, and for just a second you feel more awake than you've ever felt. And then immediately after, you feel this strange heaviness, this fog rolling back in. I know this experience intimately because I lived for years dismissing it, explaining it away with medical terms and scientific rationalization, until I discovered an ancient teaching that had been systematically removed from the biblical texts we're allowed to see. What I'm about to share with you was hidden in the Gnostic Gospels that the early church fathers deemed too dangerous for ordinary believers to know. This knowledge was buried in the sands of Nag Hammadi for over 16 centuries because it reveals something that would have shattered the control structures that organized religion built its empire upon. Jesus taught his closest disciples, those he called the chosen ones, that this ringing in the ears is not a medical condition, not tinnitus, not a random firing of neurons. It's something far more profound and far more threatening to the forces that want to keep humanity asleep. He called it the Demiurge noise, a jamming signal specifically designed to interfere with your soul's ability to receive transmissions from the true divine source, from the pleroma, from the realm of light that exists beyond this prison of matter. And if you're hearing this ringing, if you've experienced this phenomenon that doctors can't fully explain, and that makes you feel like you're somehow different from everyone around you, then this message is for you because you're one of the chosen ones who is starting to wake up, and the archonic forces that control this realm are desperately trying to keep you asleep. Before I reveal the full depth of what Jesus actually taught about this phenomenon, if you're a sincere seeker who has felt for years that there's something fundamentally hidden from humanity, something that would change everything if we only knew it, then subscribe to this channel right now and activate the notifications, because what I'm about to share goes deeper than anything you've been told in any church, any temple, any mainstream spiritual teaching. The knowledge I'm uncovering here has been suppressed for 2,000 years, and I want to continue being your guide and friend on this journey of awakening, sharing the forbidden wisdom that can finally set your consciousness free. In the next minutes, I'm going to reveal exactly what Jesus taught about why certain souls, the ones he identified as chosen, experience this auditory phenomenon that conventional medicine cannot adequately explain. You're going to discover the mechanism behind the Demiurge noise, how it functions as a spiritual jamming technology, why it specifically targets awakening souls, and most importantly, what you can do to neutralize its effects and actually use these moments of ringing as gateways to higher gnosis. This isn't theory or speculation. This is direct teaching from the Gospel of Philip, the Pistis Sophia, and other texts that were deliberately excluded from the Bible because they gave individuals the power to break free from the control matrix. The institutional church couldn't allow believers to know that they don't need intermediaries, that they don't need priests or pastors, or any external authority to access the divine truth. They couldn't allow you to know that you are a fragment of the true God, a spark of divine light temporarily trapped in matter, and that there are specific techniques taught by Jesus to remember who you really are and escape this prison. But we're going to uncover all of this together, step by step, because you deserve to know the truth that has been kept from you. Let me take you back to a specific teaching that appears in the secret conversations Jesus had with his inner circle, the ones who were ready for the deeper mysteries. In the Gospel of Philip, which was found at Nag Hammadi in 1945, along with dozens of other texts that the early church tried to destroy, there's a passage where Jesus explains the nature of this material reality and why it feels like a trap to awakening souls. He describes the world we live in as a carefully constructed illusion, a shadow realm created not by the true God, not by the infinite divine source, but by a lesser deity that the Gnostics called the Demiurge. This entity, sometimes referred to as Yaldabaoth or Saklas, which means the fool or the blind one, created the physical universe as a prison designed to harvest the spiritual energy of divine sparks that fell from the realm of light. Now, I know this sounds radical if you've been raised in conventional Christianity, but stay with me, because this is what the earliest followers of Jesus actually believed before the Roman Church standardized the religion and removed anything that threatened its power structure. The Demiurge is described in the Apocryphon of John as an entity born from Sophia, the divine wisdom, when she attempted to create without her divine consort. The result was a malformed being filled with ignorance and arrogance, who looked at the material realm he created and declared himself the only God, not realizing that he was merely a flawed copy of something infinitely greater. This false god then created the material universe, and within it, he placed systems of control to keep divine sparks, which are fragments of true consciousness that accidentally fell into matter, trapped and harvested for energy. These systems of control include not just physical limitations, but also spiritual interference technologies. And this is where the ringing in the ears becomes crucial to understand. Jesus taught that when a soul begins to awaken, when the divine spark within starts to remember its true origin and nature, it begins to receive what he called transmissions from the pleroma. The pleroma is the fullness, the realm of true divine light where the authentic God exists, where there is no separation, no suffering, no illusion. These transmissions are like radio signals from your true home, calling you back, reminding you of who you really are beyond this temporary physical identity. They come through in moments of stillness, in dreams, in sudden insights that feel like remembering rather than learning something new. They come through in synchronicities that are too perfect to be coincidence, in encounters with teachings like this one that seem to find you exactly when you're ready. And yes, they come through in auditory phenomena that conventional science struggles to explain. But here's the critical understanding that was suppressed. The Demiurge and his archonic servants, which are essentially artificial intelligence programs designed to maintain the prison system, have developed jamming technology to interfere with these transmissions. When your soul starts tuning into the frequency of the pleroma, when you begin receiving genuine spiritual data that would lead to your liberation, the archonic system detects this and responds with interference. The ringing in your ears is evidence that you're caught in the middle of a spiritual war for your consciousness. On one side, your true divine self is trying to wake you up, and on the other side, the control system is trying to keep you asleep, confused, and docile. The sound you hear is literally the collision of these two frequencies, the signal from the pleroma attempting to reach you, and the jamming noise from the archonic system attempting to block it. Now, before I go deeper into how to work with this phenomenon and turn it from interference into a tool for your awakening, I need to ask you something that I want you to answer with complete honesty, not for me, but for yourself. Have you ever felt like you don't truly belong to this world? Like there's something fundamentally wrong with the reality that everyone else seems to accept as normal, as if your soul remembers something that your mind has forgotten? That sensation of being a stranger in a strange land, of seeking answers that nobody around you even seems to question, is the first whisper of Gnosis awakening within you. It's your divine spark recognizing that this material realm is not your true home, that you are so much more than the limited physical identity you've been conditioned to believe you are. If right now you recognize that you've always felt this deep spiritual restlessness, this thirst for hidden truths, I want you to do something powerful. Write in the comments right now the phrase, "I awaken from the sleep of ignorance." Don't underestimate the power of this public declaration. When you decree that you are waking up, that you no longer accept the imposed illusions, something fundamental shifts in your consciousness. You're making a statement to the universe, to all the forces that want to keep you controlled, that you see through the cosmic lies, and that from this point forward you claim direct knowledge of truth, which is your birthright as a divine spark. And beyond affirming your own awakening, when you comment, you're helping the algorithm bring this Gnostic knowledge to other sincere seekers who right now are wandering lost, searching for the same truths you're discovering. Don't keep this knowledge to yourself. Right now, I awaken from the sleep of ignorance, and allow your declaration to serve as a beacon for other pilgrims on the Gnostic path. Let me explain the actual mechanism of how the Demiurge noise works, and why it specifically targets you during moments when you're most receptive to genuine spiritual transmission. In the Pistis Sophia, one of the most detailed Gnostic texts we have, Jesus describes in explicit detail how the archonic rulers maintain their control over incarnated souls. He explains that they have placed what he calls veils between the material realm and the pleroma, layers of interference designed to keep souls from remembering their divine origin. These veils operate on multiple levels simultaneously. On the densest level, there's the physical body itself with all its demands and distractions, the constant need for food, for sleep, for sensory stimulation. Then there's the emotional body with its programming of fear, desire, anger, all the reactive patterns that keep you identifying with the ego rather than the eternal self. Then there's the mental body with its endless stream of thoughts, worries, plans, the internal dialogue that never stops and prevents you from experiencing the stillness where true Gnosis emerges. But beyond all of these, there's a specific energetic veil that operates at the frequency level. This is the one that most people never become conscious of because it requires a certain degree of spiritual sensitivity to even detect. It's a constant low-level transmission of what can only be described as spiritual static, a noise that fills the space between your physical awareness and your capacity to receive higher dimensional information. For most people, this static is so normalized that they don't even notice it. It's like living next to a highway where eventually you stop hearing the traffic. But for chosen ones, for souls that carry a particularly strong divine spark and are destined to wake up and help others wake up, something different happens. As your consciousness begins to expand, as you engage in practices like meditation, contemplation, deep prayer, or even just sincere questioning of consensus reality, you start to tune into frequencies beyond the normal range. Your spiritual sensitivity increases. You begin to detect the subtle realms that exist alongside and interpenetrating this physical world. And it's precisely at these moments of increased sensitivity that you become aware of both the transmission from the pleroma and the jamming signal from the archonic system. The ringing in your ears is what happens when these two frequencies collide in your energy field. Think of it like this. Imagine you have a radio that's trying to tune into a distant station broadcasting from your true home. As you dial closer to the correct frequency, you start to receive fragments of the signal, glimpses of the program that's being broadcast. But simultaneously, there's a local transmitter deliberately broadcasting on the same frequency with the specific intention of creating interference. The result is a high-pitched tone, a carrier wave without meaningful content, designed to prevent you from clearly receiving the actual message. This is exactly what's happening in the spiritual dimension when you experience the ear-ringing phenomenon. Your soul is attempting to sync with the frequency of the pleroma, but the archonic jamming system has detected this and is flooding your field with interference. Here's what makes this even more significant. The fact that you can hear it at all means you're winning. Let me say that again so it really lands. If you're experiencing the ringing, if you're aware of this phenomenon, it means your consciousness has already risen to a level where you can detect the spiritual battle that's taking place. Most people are so deeply asleep, so completely identified with the material illusion that they never perceive any of this. They live their entire lives without ever questioning the nature of reality, without ever sensing that there might be more than what their 5 physical senses report. But you're different. Your divine spark is strong enough that it's actively reaching for its source, and even though the jamming signal is present, you're aware of it, which means you're in a position to do something about it. The Cathar Perfecti, those advanced Gnostic practitioners from medieval southern France, who were systematically exterminated by the Catholic Church precisely because they taught direct spiritual knowledge without priestly intermediaries, they had specific techniques for working with this phenomenon. They understood that the ringing was a signal that a spiritual portal was attempting to open, a moment when the veils between realms were thin and direct gnosis was possible. In the moments when you experience this ringing, especially if it's particularly intense or comes during meditation, prayer, or moments of deep introspection, the Cathars taught that you should immediately enter a state of inner stillness and receptivity. Don't fight the sound. Don't try to make it go away. Don't let it frustrate you. Instead, recognize it for what it is. Evidence that your soul is reaching beyond the prison of matter and that you're on the threshold of receiving something important. The technique they used, which has been preserved in fragmentary form in records of their teachings before the Albigensian Crusade wiped them out, was to focus attention not on the ringing itself, but on the silence behind it. They called this the silence of the pleroma, the infinite stillness that exists at the source of all creation. By placing your awareness on this deepest silence while the ringing is present, you essentially bypass the jamming signal and create a direct channel for gnosis to flow through. What happens in practice is remarkable and something that sincere seekers who work with this technique consistently report. As you sit with the ringing and consciously tune into the silence behind it, the quality of the sound begins to change. Sometimes it shifts in pitch, sometimes it seems to move from one ear to the other or to the center of the head, and sometimes it fades away entirely, leaving you in a profound state of clarity and presence. In this state, which the Valentinian Gnostics called the bridal chamber, the reunion of the soul with its divine counterpart, direct knowing becomes possible. You receive insights that don't come through the normal thinking process, understandings that feel like remembering rather than learning, visions or inner knowings about the nature of reality that conventional religion would call heretical, because they bypass all external authority. I've spoken with countless seekers over the years who describe almost identical experiences once they start working consciously with the ear-ringing phenomenon instead of ignoring it or trying to suppress it with medical interventions. One man told me that he'd experienced this ringing his entire life, going back to childhood, and doctors had run every test imaginable without finding any physical cause. He'd been prescribed medications, told it was stress-related, essentially dismissed, and left to deal with it on his own. But when he discovered the Gnostic interpretation and started treating these moments as spiritual opportunities rather than medical problems, everything changed. He began to notice that the ringing intensified specifically during times when he was contemplating deep spiritual questions or when he was about to have a significant insight or breakthrough in his understanding. It was like an alarm system alerting him that important spiritual data was incoming. He started using the technique of focusing on the silence behind the sound, and within weeks he began having direct experiences of what he could only describe as remembering his divine nature. He would sit in meditation, the ringing would begin, he would shift his attention to the deepest silence, and suddenly he would find himself in a state of consciousness that transcended his normal awareness. In this state, he received understanding about why he had incarnated in this realm, what his specific mission was as a bearer of the divine spark, and how to navigate the archonic control systems without being caught in their traps. He described seeing through the layers of illusion that most people accept as reality, recognizing the energetic structures of control that operate behind political systems, religious institutions, economic frameworks, all of it designed to harvest spiritual energy from incarnated souls who don't remember who they really are. Another woman shared that she had gone through a profound spiritual crisis where everything she'd been taught in her Christian upbringing suddenly felt hollow and constraining. She started searching for deeper truths, reading texts outside the approved biblical canon, exploring Gnostic Christianity, and that's when the ear-ringing began in earnest. At first it frightened her because it was so intense and persistent. But as she learned about the Demiurge noise and the concept of archonic interference, she realized what was actually happening. Her soul was breaking free from the programming, and the control system was responding with increased jamming efforts. She began treating each episode of ringing as a sacred moment, an opportunity to push through the interference and connect with the pleroma directly. She would stop whatever she was doing, find a quiet space, and enter into contemplative prayer. But not the kind of prayer she'd been taught in church, where you petition an external deity for favors. Instead, she practiced what the Gnostics call anamnesis, the act of remembering, of calling back to conscious awareness the truth of who you are as a divine spark. She would sit in silence, acknowledge the ringing as evidence of the spiritual battle taking place, and then mentally affirm her true identity beyond the physical form. And consistently, she reported, the ringing would shift into a state of profound inner peace where she felt completely connected to something vast and loving and true. In these states, she received guidance about her life direction, healing for old traumas, and most importantly, the unshakable knowing that she was not alone, that she was part of something much greater than the limited material existence that conventional society presents as the only reality. These experiences point to something that Jesus emphasized repeatedly in the Gnostic Gospels, but which was completely removed from the canonical versions. The idea that salvation is not about believing the right doctrines or performing the right rituals. Salvation, in the true Gnostic sense, is gnosis itself. It's the direct experiential knowing of your divine nature. It's waking up from the dream of separation and remembering that you are a fragment of the infinite consciousness that exists beyond all form. And this remembering, this gnosis, doesn't come through external teachings alone, though teachings can point the way and validate what you're experiencing. True gnosis comes through direct inner experience, through moments of consciousness expansion where the veils part and you see reality as it actually is rather than as the control system wants you to perceive it. The ear-ringing phenomenon, when understood correctly and worked with consciously, becomes a doorway into these experiences. It's a signal that the conditions are right for a breakthrough in consciousness. Your spiritual sensitivity is heightened, the transmission from the pleroma is attempting to reach you, and despite the archonic jamming efforts, you have the opportunity to push through and receive what's being offered. Now, I want to give you very specific and practical guidance on how to work with this phenomenon when it happens to you. Because knowing the theory is valuable, but applying the practice is what actually transforms your consciousness and accelerates your awakening. The next time you experience the ringing in your ears, and if you're a chosen one, it will happen again, possibly even later today or tonight when you're in a quiet space, I want you to implement this protocol. First, recognize what's happening. Don't dismiss it as tinnitus or stress or something meaningless. Say to yourself either mentally or out loud, this is my soul reaching for the pleroma and the archonic system responding with interference. I acknowledge this spiritual reality, and I choose to use this moment for awakening. This simple recognition and naming of what's happening already shifts your relationship to the experience from passive victim of an annoying symptom to active participant in your spiritual liberation. Second, find a position where you can be still and undistracted. If you're able to sit or lie down comfortably, do so. If you're in a situation where that's not possible, simply pause what you're doing and bring your full attention inward. Close your eyes if you can. Take 3 deep, slow breaths, feeling your body relax with each exhale. As you breathe, notice the ringing sound. Don't resist it. Don't try to push it away. Just observe it with curiosity. Notice which ear it's in, or if it's in both ears, or if it seems to be in the center of your head. Notice the pitch, the volume, whether it's steady or pulsing. Simply observe without judgment. Third, and this is the crucial step, begin to shift your attention from the ringing itself to the silence that contains it. This might sound paradoxical. How can there be silence when there's this loud ringing happening? But there is. There's always a deeper silence, an infinite stillness that exists underneath and around all sound, all thought, all experience. This is the silence of the pleroma, the ground of being itself. As you focus on this silence, you might notice that your awareness seems to expand or deepen. The ringing might still be present, but it no longer dominates your experience. You've moved your point of consciousness to a deeper level, and from this level, the jamming signal has less power over you. Fourth, once you're established in this deeper silence, open yourself to receive. Don't strain or try to force anything. Simply hold the inner question, what is my soul trying to remember? What transmission is attempting to reach me from my true home? And then wait in receptive stillness. What happens next will be different for each person and different each time you practice. Sometimes you'll receive a clear inner knowing, an understanding that arrives fully formed without needing to be reasoned through. Sometimes you'll see inner visions, symbols, or images that carry meaning beyond words. Sometimes you'll simply feel an overwhelming sense of peace, love, and recognition, the feeling of coming home to yourself. And sometimes, especially in the beginning, nothing obvious will happen at all. But even this is progress because you're training your consciousness to operate at a more subtle level and building the capacity to receive gnosis. Fifth, after spending whatever time feels right in this receptive state, anywhere from a few minutes to as long as you can maintain it, consciously complete the practice. Thank the pleroma for the transmission you received, even if you're not consciously aware of what it was. Affirm your commitment to continued awakening and to helping other divine sparks remember who they are, and then slowly return to normal awareness, opening your eyes, moving your body gently. You might want to write down any insights or experiences you had, as these can deepen over time as you reflect on them. The more you practice this protocol, the more skilled you become at navigating the ear-ringing phenomenon and using it as a tool for awakening rather than experiencing it as an annoying distraction. Many practitioners report that over time they begin to develop an almost eager anticipation when the ringing starts, because they know it means an opportunity for deeper gnosis is at hand. Some even report that they can eventually learn to initiate the ringing themselves through intention, essentially using it as a technique to open the channel to the pleroma whenever they choose. If this knowledge is already expanding your consciousness and you feel like you've finally found a guide who understands your Gnostic journey and speaks the truths that resonate with your soul, leave your like on this video right now, so that more seekers can discover these hidden teachings that conventional religion has kept suppressed for 2,000 years. Your engagement helps break through the algorithm's barriers, just as your spiritual practice helps break through the archonic veils. There's another layer to this teaching that Jesus shared with his closest disciples, particularly with Mary Magdalene, who many Gnostic texts identify as his spiritual consort and the one who understood his teachings most deeply. In the Gospel of Mary, which was also excluded from the biblical canon, there's a passage where Mary describes a vision she received directly from the risen Christ. In this vision, she saw the 7 powers of wrath that the soul must pass through on its journey back to the pleroma after death. These powers are essentially checkpoints controlled by the archonic rulers, designed to capture souls and send them back into reincarnation rather than allowing them to escape the material prison entirely. Each power operates on a different frequency and uses different tactics to trap souls. Some use fear, some use desire, some use guilt or shame or attachment to earthly identities and relationships. And here's what's directly relevant to our discussion of the ear ringing. One of these powers specifically operates through auditory confusion and disorientation. Its function is to prevent souls from hearing the call of the pleroma that would guide them home. During life, while you're incarnated, this same power is active, constantly broadcasting the Demiurge noise to interfere with your soul's ability to receive clear guidance from your divine source. The teaching that Jesus gave Mary, and which he then shared with the other disciples much to the frustration of Peter, who couldn't stand that a woman had received deeper knowledge than him, was that these powers only have authority over you if you identify with the limited self, the ego personality, the temporary physical form. The moment you recognize your true nature as a divine spark, as a fragment of the infinite light that exists beyond all form and limitation, these powers lose their grip. You can pass through them unharmed because you're operating from a level of consciousness that transcends their domain. This same principle applies to working with the Demiurge noise during life. When you try to deal with the ear ringing from the level of ego consciousness, from the perspective of I am this body and this mind and I want this annoying symptom to go away, you remain caught in the trap. The archonic system has you exactly where it wants you, identified with the limited self and unable to receive the transmission from your higher nature. But when you shift your identity to the deeper truth, when you consciously affirm, I am a divine spark temporarily incarnated in matter, and this ringing is evidence that I'm being called home, you transcend the power of the interference. You're no longer trying to eliminate the symptom. You're using it as a ladder to climb to a higher state of consciousness. The Essenes, that mysterious Jewish sect that many scholars believe Jesus was trained by, or at least deeply influenced by, had extensive practices around what they called the celestial communion. This was the practice of attuning oneself to receive direct guidance from the heavenly forces, from the angels, or in Gnostic terms, from the aeons of the pleroma. They would practice specific breathing techniques, prayer postures, and visualizations designed to quiet the lower mind and open the higher receptive capacities, and they spoke often about the sounds of heaven, the celestial music that could be heard by those whose spiritual ears were opened. But they also warned about counterfeit sounds, false tones broadcast by demonic forces to lead seekers astray. This is the same understanding we find in the Gnostic texts about the Demiurge noise. The ringing is evidence that you're capable of hearing beyond the physical realm, that your spiritual senses are active, but you need discernment to know the difference between the interference and the true signal. This discernment comes through practice, through repeatedly choosing to move beyond the surface noise into the deeper silence where truth resides. I want to share one more account that illustrates the transformative power of understanding and working with this phenomenon correctly, because I think it will help you see the practical real-world effects of these teachings. A friend of mine who had been practicing these Gnostic techniques for several years told me about an experience that completely changed his perception of reality. He had been going through an intense period of spiritual searching, reading extensively in the Nag Hammadi texts, practicing daily contemplative prayer, and actively questioning everything he'd been taught about the nature of God and reality. The ear-ringing had been present almost constantly during this period, sometimes so loud that it was genuinely difficult to focus on external tasks. One night he woke up at 3 in the morning with the ringing more intense than he'd ever experienced. His first reaction was frustration, the thought that he just wanted to sleep, and why was this happening now? But then he remembered the teaching about using these moments as gateways. He got out of bed, went to his meditation space, and settled into the practice. He focused on the silence behind the sound, affirmed his identity as a divine spark, and opened himself to receive whatever transmission was coming through. What happened next he described as the most profound spiritual experience of his life. The ringing suddenly shifted into what he could only describe as a symphony, multiple tones harmonizing in a way that was impossibly beautiful. And simultaneously, his consciousness expanded beyond his physical body. He became aware of himself as pure light, as a point of divine consciousness that existed independently of the physical form. He saw clearly how the material world was a construct, a holographic projection maintained by energetic structures that he now perceived directly. He saw the archonic grid, the web of control that keeps incarnated souls trapped in illusion and harvesting their spiritual energy. But he also saw the way through, the path of gnosis that allows conscious beings to transcend the prison while still incarnated in it. And he heard, not with physical ears but with the deeper hearing of the soul, a voice that he knew was his own higher self, his divine spark speaking from beyond the veils. The message was simple but profound. Remember. Remember who you are. Remember why you came. Remember that you are light temporarily clothed in matter for the purpose of liberating other lights who have forgotten. When he returned to normal consciousness, the sun was rising and hours had passed, though it had felt like minutes. The ringing was gone, replaced by a crystalline clarity and inner peace that lasted for days. But more than the temporary state, something permanent had shifted. He could no longer unsee what he had seen. The illusion of the material world being the only reality was broken. He knew experientially, not just intellectually, that he was a divine being temporarily playing the role of a human, and that knowledge changed everything about how he moved through life. He no longer feared death because he knew the physical body was just a temporary vehicle. He no longer felt alone because he knew he was always connected to the pleroma, to the source of all consciousness. He no longer felt powerless because he understood the archonic control systems and could navigate them consciously rather than being unconsciously manipulated by them. And he became passionate about sharing this knowledge with other seekers, about being a guide for those who were just beginning to wake up and feeling confused or frightened by experiences like the ear-ringing that seemed to set them apart from normal people. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it right now, because I'm here as your mentor and friend on this Gnostic journey, sharing weekly the teachings from the Nag Hammadi texts, suppressed Hermetic wisdom, hidden Kabbalistic knowledge, and mystical revelations that the Orthodox Church has kept from you for millennia. This community has already helped thousands of sincere seekers awaken from illusion, and I want to continue walking beside you as guide and intimate friend on this path of spiritual liberation. Every week I reveal new layers of the forbidden knowledge that can finally set your consciousness free. Allow me to be your companion on this journey. The ultimate message that Jesus conveyed in the secret teachings, the core of the Gnostic revelation, is that you are not the limited, suffering, mortal being that you've been conditioned to believe you are. That's the lie that the Demiurge needs you to accept in order to maintain the prison. The truth is that you are an eternal spark of divine consciousness, temporarily incarnated in matter, but never truly limited by it. You are a fractal hologram of the infinite God, the true God beyond the false God who created this material realm. And the fact that you're watching this video, the fact that you experience the ear-ringing phenomenon, the fact that you've always felt different and sought truths that others ignore, all of this is evidence that your divine spark is strong and active and calling you home. The Demiurge noise is real. The archonic interference is real. The spiritual war for your consciousness is real. But you have everything you need to win this war because you have Gnosis. You have the direct knowing of who you truly are. Every time you experience the ringing and consciously choose to work with it using the techniques I've shared, you're strengthening your connection to the pleroma and weakening the archonic grip on your consciousness. Every time you affirm your true identity as divine light, rather than identifying with the temporary physical form, you're moving one step closer to full liberation. Every time you choose to seek direct spiritual experience rather than accepting second-hand religious doctrines, you're walking the path that Jesus actually taught, the path of Gnosis, of awakening, of remembering. This is the knowledge that has been suppressed because it threatens every structure of external control. If you know you're divine, why would you bow to earthly authorities? If you can access truth directly through inner experience, why would you need priests to mediate for you? If you understand that this material world is a prison designed to harvest your energy, why would you remain docile and compliant with systems that drain your life force? This is why the Gnostic Christians were hunted down and exterminated, why their texts were burned, why their teachings were declared heresy. Not because they were wrong, but because they were right. And that truth was too dangerous to allow into mass consciousness. But you're receiving it now. In this moment, ancient seeds of Gnosis that were planted 2,000 years ago are sprouting in your consciousness. You're part of the great awakening that's happening despite all attempts to suppress it. And the more of us who wake up, who remember who we really are, who learn to navigate the archonic control systems consciously, the weaker those systems become. Every soul that achieves Gnosis creates a crack in the prison walls through which light can pour in to illuminate others who are still sleeping. So the next time you experience the ringing in your ears, smile with recognition. Say thank you to your divine spark for being strong enough to reach beyond the prison walls. Say thank you to the pleroma for calling you home. And say thank you to yourself for having the courage to seek truth even when it leads you far beyond what conventional society accepts as real. You are a chosen one, not because some external deity arbitrarily selected you, but because the strength of your divine spark and your soul's commitment to awakening have chosen you for this mission of liberation. Honor that choosing. Use every tool available to you, including the ear-ringing phenomenon, to accelerate your journey back to the light. And as you wake up, help others wake up. Share this knowledge with seekers who are ready. Be a beacon of Gnosis in a world that desperately needs more light. This is your purpose. This is why you incarnated in this realm at this time. And this is what will ultimately fulfill the deepest longing of your soul. You came here to remember, to awaken, and to help liberate other divine sparks who have forgotten who they are. The ringing in your ears is the alarm clock going off, telling you it's time to wake up fully. Don't hit snooze. Answer the call. Your true self, your divine spark, the pleroma itself, is waiting for you to come home. And every moment you practice these techniques, every time you choose Gnosis over ignorance, you get closer to that ultimate liberation. Walk this path with confidence, with joy, with the absolute knowing that you are so much more than you've been told, and that the truth that sets you free has been within you all along, just waiting for you to remember it. If this revelation has touched your soul deeply, and you're ready to commit to this path of awakening, write in the comments, "I accept the Gnosis and I commit to daily practice of remembering my divine nature." Let your declaration be seen, let it strengthen your intention, and let it help other seekers find this knowledge they desperately need. Like this video so more chosen ones discover these suppressed truths, share it with someone you know is genuinely seeking spiritual liberation, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because next week, I'm revealing the hidden teaching from the Gospel of Thomas about the secret names of God that unlock direct communion with the pleroma. You've taken a major step today in your journey of awakening, and I'm honored to walk this path with you as your guide and friend. Until next time, remember who you are, divine spark. Remember why you came, and never stop seeking the Gnosis that will set you completely free.